January 17, 1991. A U.S. Navy F/A-18C Hornet launches from a carrier deck in the Persian Gulf, turns inland, and vanishes. No distress call. No wreckage recovered in coalition hands. The aircraft that killed it was not a secret weapon, not a new generation threat pulled from some hidden hangar. It was a Soviet interceptor designed in 1964 to chase American spy planes at 80,000 feet. A MiG-25 Foxbat. And that single engagement would stand, by the end of the war, as the only confirmed Iraqi air-to-air kill of the entire conflict. The contradiction sits at the center of everything that followed. Iraq flew one of the largest air forces on Earth in January 1991, stocked with Cold War hardware drawn from 3 different doctrines: Soviet, French, and the export-grade shadows of American design. 43 days later, 37 Iraqi fighters had been shot from the sky, and coalition air-to-air losses rounded to almost nothing. This is every Cold War fighter that met over the desert, and the reason the math broke so violently. The foundation of the Iraqi Air Force in 1991 was a machine first flown in 1955. The Mikoyan-Gurevich MiG-21 Fishbed was a lightweight supersonic dart built for one purpose: to intercept Western jets cheaply, and to do so in overwhelming numbers. Its design philosophy was Soviet austerity made aerodynamic, a Mach 2 ceiling, R3 and K-13 infrared missiles. Maintenance simple enough to perform on a dispersed airstrip with minimal tooling. For 2 decades, it had been the most produced supersonic fighter on Earth. By 1991, its radar was a relic of an earlier age. On its avionics, primitive against any opponent carrying a modern pulse Doppler set, and its cockpit visibility notoriously cramped. Its combat radius, roughly 300 kilometers, tied it to the airfield it launched from. Iraqi fishbeds flew defensive sorties during the war. They scored nothing. The majority were destroyed on the ground during opening strikes or lost in unequal engagements against coalition fighters who saw them before they saw anything. The MiG-23 Flogger was supposed to solve these problems. First flown in 1967, it was the Soviet answer to the fishbed's limitations: variable sweep wings that swung forward for takeoff and back for speed, R-23 and R-24 missiles with genuine beyond visual range potential, and a radar that improved meaningfully on its predecessor. On paper, a generational leap. In practice, it was maintenance-hungry, unreliable in the harsh desert environment, and mediocre in close combat against fourth-generation opposition. 8 Iraqi MiG-23s were confirmed shot down in air-to-air engagements during the Gulf War. These were the platforms Iraq possessed in quantity, the ones intended to absorb losses and still outnumber the enemy. They did neither, which raised the obvious question: what did Iraq have that was actually modern? Return to the Foxbat with full context. The MiG-25 was designed in 1964 to counter threats that, in the end, never materialized. The American B-70 strategic bomber canceled before production the SR-71 reconnaissance platform it could never quite catch. What it offered was raw speed, Mach 3 capability, R-40 long-range missiles the size of utility poles, a radar so powerful it could burn through most jamming of its era, though it was largely blind below the horizon against targets hugging terrain. The Foxbat's only confirmed kill came on that opening night against the F/A-18C. A second engagement produced disputed Iraqi claims of damage inflicted on an F-15, claims coalition records never confirmed. Most Foxbats were destroyed on the ground or fled north and east as the war progressed. Then the MiG-29 Fulcrum, first flown in 1977, the only genuine fourth-generation fighter Iraq possessed. Helmet-mounted sights, R-73 Archer missiles with off-bore sight capability. Dogfight performance that, in skilled hands, rivaled the F-16 at close range. This was the aircraft the West genuinely feared in a European scenario. But Iraq's export Fulcrums were downgraded. Their avionics stripped relative to frontline Soviet models, their integration with a functioning command network non-existent once coalition strikes began. Iraqi pilots were trained to Soviet client standards, not to the standards of the regiments that flew the aircraft from its home soil. 4 Fulcrums fled to Iran. The rest were destroyed on the ground or died attempting to engage. Alongside them flew the Dassault Mirage F-1EQ, Iraq's French wildcard, capable at low level with its Cyrano 4 radar and Matra missiles, but outclassed in any contested airspace with modern opposition. 24 Mirage F-1s also escaped to Iran. Iraq had the hardware. Individual aircraft quality was not on its own the problem. So what was? The F-15 Eagle first flew in 1972. It was America's post-Vietnam answer to a specific fear, that Soviet MiGs would outturn and outshoot the next generation of Western fighters the way they had humbled the F-4 over North Vietnam. The Eagle was built to erase that fear, thrust to weight greater than 1, meaning it could accelerate going straight up. An APG-63 radar capable of detecting and tracking targets at ranges its opponents could not match. A missile load that spanned the AIM-7 Sparrow, the AIM-9 Sidewinder, and the newer AIM-120 AMR-AAM as it entered service. Over 5,900 sorties were flown by coalition F-15S during the Gulf War. 0 combat losses. 36 of the 39 confirmed coalition air-to-air kills belonged to the Eagle. Paired with it at sea was the Grumman F-14 Tomcat, the U.S. Navy's long-armed fleet defender, first flown in 1970. Variable sweep wings. The AWG-9 radar married to the AIM-54 Phoenix missile, a combination capable of tracking and engaging multiple targets simultaneously at ranges no other fighter could match. The Tomcat had been built to kill Soviet bombers before they could release cruise missiles against carrier battle groups. Over Iraq, it flew combat air patrol and escort missions in a different kind of war. Restrictive rules of engagement and strict identification protocols kept the Phoenix largely holstered. The Tomcat finished the war with a single kill, an Iraqi helicopter. These aircraft were exceptional by any measure, but their tallies alone do not explain a ratio of 37 to nearly 0. Something larger than airframes was shaping the outcome. Of the General Dynamics F-16 Fighting Falcon flew more than 13,500 sorties over Iraq and Kuwait, more than any other coalition aircraft. Single-engine, 9G capable, fitted with lantern pods for precision attack at night, it was the multi-role workhorse at the heart of the high-low mix concept that shaped American procurement from the late 1970s forward. The McDonnell Douglas F/A 18 Hornet served a parallel role for the Navy and Marine Corps, a single airframe replacing the A-4, the A-7, and elements of the F-4 mission set, delivering precision strike from carrier decks with multi-role flexibility. The Panavia Tornado contributed in 2 variants. British and Saudi GR-1s flew terrain-hugging missions in the opening nights, delivering JP-233 runway cratering munitions at extreme low altitude. On the F-3 variant handled air defense. Early low-level tornado losses, 6 RAF aircraft in the opening phase, forced a rapid doctrinal shift to medium altitude. Then the detail that rewires the story. The McDonnell Douglas F-4G Wild Weasel. A 1958 airframe, older than most of Iraq's inventory, flying more than 2,500 suppression of enemy air defenses sorties with the AGM-88 HARM anti-radiation missile. The F-4 was a retired generation of iron by 1991, but its job in this war was not to win dogfights. Its job was to deafen the enemy. By the 4th day of the war, Iraqi surface-to-air radars had learned what switching on meant, and most of them stopped doing it. The aircraft that mattered most in those opening 96 hours was not the F-15 nor the MiG-29. It was a 30-year-old Phantom variant jamming, baiting, and killing the ground systems that were supposed to make coalition fighters bleed. This war was not being decided in dogfights. It was being decided in the electromagnetic spectrum. Pull every thread together. Iraq's problem was not that its aircraft were outclassed individually in every metric, because they were not. The problem was that individual platform performance does not matter when you are flying blind. Coalition fighters did not dogfight Iraq. They processed it. E-3 Sentry AWACS aircraft, orbiting at 30,000 feet, well behind the forward edge of the battle, painted every Iraqi takeoff in real time. F-15 pilots received target data and vectors before their own onboard radars had locked anything. F-4Gs killed the ground radars that would otherwise have warned Iraqi pilots where those F-15s were, and at what altitude, and on what heading. When a MiG-29 pilot lit his afterburner over western Iraq, he was climbing into a kill chain that had already tagged his aircraft, vectored an interceptor toward him, cleared the fire's authorization, and blinded his ground controllers so they could not tell him he was about to die. When a Tornado GR-1 was shot down in the opening nights flying low-level interdiction, the coalition did not lose the war. It adapted inside 96 hours, climbing to medium altitude and letting precision-guided munitions accomplish what low-level heroics had required in 1973. Address the contradictions plainly. The MiG-25 was faster than anything in the coalition inventory. The MiG-29 could outturn the F-16 in a close-in knife fight. The Mirage F-1 was a capable low-level striker. None of it mattered. The aircraft Iraq flew were a catalog of Cold War engineering. The aircraft the coalition flew were a network. That is the reason 37 Iraqi fighters fell and coalition air-to-air losses rounded to zero. Not better metal. Better wiring between the metal. Every fighter in this video, Iraqi and coalition alike, was designed during the Cold War, for a Cold War that never came. The Central European battle they had been engineered to fight, NATO armor against Warsaw Pact columns under contested skies, never arrived. The 1991 desert was the first and only place these machines were tested against one another at scale in sustained combat, with their full supporting architectures committed. The verdict was brutal and it was clear. The era of the lone fighter ace, and of the platform that won because it could turn tighter or climb faster than its opponent, was finished. The aircraft of the next 30 years, stealth-shaped, data-linked, sensor-fused, were designed around what happened in those 43 days. The F-22, the F-35, the Chinese J-20, the Russian Su-57. Every one of them is a child of this war's lesson. Close on the image of 24 Mirage F-1s and 4 MiG-29s sitting on Iranian airfields, never to return to Iraqi service, a flight that was less a retreat than a funeral for an entire way of building and fighting air forces. The Cold War fighter as a concept died over Iraq. Everything that came after was built so it would not happen again.